Good evening and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their ongoing support in bringing you our fortnightly Q&A. Tonight, we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Matt Adams from Frontier Kelpies and Cow Dogs.
How's it going, mate?
Good, mate. How's everyone?
Not too
Not
bad.
too bad, thank you.
Very good.
What's keeping you busy at the moment, Matt?
Yeah, it's harvest season out here. Not that we don't grow any grain ourselves. We graze all ours out, but we've got feedlots, so it's we're just busy with catering for other farmers, helping out a little bit, getting a bit of hay shifted from a place that caters for us. And then also bringing a few cattle back. We take our weaner cattle north, and then on a couple of bigger lease places, and then bring them back to the feedlot as feedlot weights. So there's a bit of that going on as well. So it's always busy, mate.
Cool. Where's home?
So we're based at Mendoran or towards Turawina from Mendoran. We've got one place there. Then another place back towards Coonabarabran, a little place called Mollyann. So we have another place there. That was the first place we bought. It's only a 500-acre little block. And then we have two places at Manila that we lease, and then another two places up at Inverell. So we sort of spread it between all the places.
You frequent fire points up, mate.
Yeah, it keeps us busy, mate. Yeah, there's about 50,000 acres in total, so it keeps us busy. And it's all livestock, no grain farming, so it's all livestock.
Yeah, beautiful. You want to tell us a little bit about your operation?
Yeah, it's been very, very different over the years for us because it was only about 10 years ago that we sold our rodeo business. So for probably 28 years of my life, it was revolved around rodeo stock, believe it or not, bucking bulls and bucking horses. We had about 400 bucking horses at one stage, and like with rodeo cows and rodeo stock. So that sort of engulfed my life for a long time. But then once we got out of that, we actually went into the dairy industry for quite a few years. And that was the utter madness. And then got out of that and went in the interim. We always had beef cattle, but in sheep. But now we're just specifically beef cattle and sheep. So it's we feed all our own cattle, try and sell direct, and do the same for lambs.
Yeah, where'd you grow up, mate?
So I grew up in a little place just between Willow Tree and Murrundi, where the Wade Ridge is there at Cancool. Yeah, so that's where I grew up, on a little 100-acre farm with my mother, where I lived on my own there with mum. And I've proved the theory that I think it's Inuit or it's not, this whole dog farming thing. Like as a young bloke, I lived there on my own with mum, and I didn't really I had a relationship with my father, but I never really had a father role model as such. And but I was very fortunate. The next door neighbour was, and I guess this is where it all started. I was always just mad keen on dogs and horses and any type of animal. Much to my poor old mum's horror at times, with a little 100 acres there, I'd be always bringing something home, and with a new idea, new venture, how I could make it bigger and better. And then but Philip Swain was a guy next door, and he used to manage. He had his own property, and it was quite hilly terrain there, up in the Murrundi Ranges. And Philip was a hell of a good hand and a bit of a different sort of guy. In the fact, for me as a kid, you'd hear him mustering in the hills, and I'd jump on my pony and fly up and try and catch up with him, and he used to muster at 100 mile an hour, and he I think he used to do it intentionally. Like he wouldn't even acknowledge that I was behind him for about the first hour. He just leave you following him, and you'd sort of think, am I in the road here? Am I doing the wrong thing? And then that went on for years. So he sort of became a father figure to me, really, and taught me a lot. Like, when I say he taught me a lot, that's how times have changed, I guess. And we have this ongoing joke with my boys, because I've got 3 boys of my own now. And back then, I had to earn every bit of knowledge that I could get. So I'd follow and chase him and just wait for him to, an opportunity to do something for him in hope that I might learn something, you know. And most of them old fellas back in the day, you know, they didn't speak much. They just didn't talk much, full stop, you know. And but yeah, Philip later on, you know, he did a bit of 3 sheep trialing, I think. He was pretty renowned dog man. And yeah, so I learned a lot off him. But like I said, you know, it's an ongoing joke with my boys because, you know, they obviously all worked for me, all 3 of them, on and off. And, you know, I used to tell the joke about when I was a little fella, I wouldn't sleep the night before. If Philip told me we were landmarking tomorrow, I wouldn't sleep. Like, I'd be up all night that excited because we're going to landmark, you know. My boys, you know, they laugh because, you know, they used to dread landmarking. And this was nothing, you know, but that's how passionate I was about it. And I didn't like school much. So my mum was pretty staunch. She you know, had a pretty big stick. And there was another old bloke that used to live up on Philip's place, Kevin Dawson. He was no shearer. And luckily for me, Mum used to like a camp in. So I'd tell her that I'd get myself off to the school bus and I'd go early and meet old Kevin on the road, and then we'd be off to the shearing shed for the day. And this went on for months and months and months before I got busted and they ended up trying to ship me off to boarding school and all sorts of things, but none of it really worked in their favour. They didn't really succeed with the whole education side of it.
As you told me to piss off at any time here, but like not having your father around and having your father figure, and like obviously that meant a lot to you there, Phil. Like, how did that change your relationship working with your sons and bringing them along?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, I guess, because I mean, any father will tell you that, you know, it's just not an easy job, you know, like having 3 boys, and I guess all 3 boys are a bit like me. They're a bit bullheaded and, you know, want to do it their way and one thing or another. And I mean, every father has that experience with their sons, but yeah, it was really good. And like I said, my father was a knowledgeable guy, and you know, I don't have any. You know, I never, ever had a problem with him, really. Oh, I did. I had a few, you know, times on and off with him. But it was sort of good for me in the fact of, you know, I never felt that, you know, he was a bad dad and because of this or because of that, you know, it's held me back. Like you said with my boys, I just took everything, you know, that I didn't like and tried to apply it to what I did, you know. And yeah. Look, you know, I can't say I hope I've done a good job, but they don't let on to me that I have anyway. So, but they're all going all right and pretty successful. So I guess, but yeah. So to answer your question, it was really, you know, like good in the fact that I guess probably for me the hardest thing today is, and I mean I know it's just changed times and how much everything's changed is like back then, and I really love this part of it back then, and that went on from Philip to other ones. You had to earn people's like you had to earn their respect to get them to teach you something. You know, like you had to go and work for nothing. It wasn't a thing. You know, you weren't thinking, oh, this bug's not paying me or whatever. You were just so grateful. You know, if you thought that guy had the knowledge, you know, I'd work all day for him for nothing to get that knowledge. You know, and it just used to fascinate me. So I'd be, you know, like I'd be there, you know, an hour early, just you know, in hope that I might learn something. But obviously, kids today, you know, and I mean, I don't mean to get on that bandwagon, but they sort of don't. You know what I mean? Times have changed drastically, I guess, is the only way I can put it.
And has that helped you? Because I know that you help other young kids that might be doing a bit rough and that. Has that upbringing, that mentality helped you bring those young fellas along?
100%, yeah, 100%. I'm pretty lucky too. Like, I mean, Rachel got married very young and had kids young. We've been, I can't even tell you how many years now. It's been too long, and you know, it's been great.
Man, just make something up.
she's yeah, been a big part in it and a big help. Like we've you know, throughout the rodeo industry and motocross, we've mentored a lot of kids, and but she's you know, she's been a really big part in that, in the fact of, you know, she knows when to pull me up and pull the reins a bit, I guess. And you know, she's a big help, you know, with that. Like I'll probably sometimes get a little bit too passionate about it, you know, and be a little bit too hard, I guess. And then she'll rein me back in and say, listen, you probably need to do this and this. And between us, it you know, it really, really, really works well, you know.
Has your little girl softened you up a bit as well?
Yeah, they definitely did. So we had the 3 boys older. And then I've changed drastically. There's no doubt about that. Like when I was young, I was way harder and stupider, I guess, as all young people are. Like want to do it my way, and or and then much harder. Like the boys still joke about the being kicked around in circles and their feet didn't hit the ground for sort of 10 minutes. But then like when the little girl came along, and I think I smacked her once when she was about 10, gave her a little tiny tap on the bum, and then had to go and buy her lollies like 5 minutes later because had to make up. So there's certainly a big difference with the boys and girls, that's for sure.
How has that influenced? And we'll talk a bit about some other stuff, but how has that influenced your dogs from changing yourself, like noticing a change in yourself and adapting? Has that influenced the way, not just the way you educate a dog, but the dogs you actually stay in your camp now?
Yeah, no doubt. Like, and there's no doubt in my mind like that. Like you said, getting older, one, I guess, having the girls for two, teaches you patience, and that with dogs is, in my opinion, that's probably one of the most important things, going is that whole patience side of it. If you don't have that patience with your dogs and willing to put the time in and willing to forgive, you're not going to go far, in my opinion, because, like I think a lot of people are, and I used to be, 100%, just 100%, too hard, too quick to jump, you need to be a bit more forgiving and you'll get it back. There's no question about it.
Put that back the other way. Do you find you treat or expect more from a dog to a bitch? Like I know often some people are not softer on their daughters, but like you expect different things from them. Do you find that relates?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I've never actually thought about that till you just raised it now, because with my program, I keep a lot more bitches than the dogs. Because I either know where I can go to an outside dog, or I can go back to a dog that I've sold, or so forth and fifth. So I tend to not keep too many dogs. But yeah, I guess you do without knowing it. Now I think about it, I guess I am a little bit. I guess you do tend to get a bit closer relationship with a bitch than a dog, in my opinion, because the dogs are a bit more like boys. I guess they're just piss on your leg and leave you, basically. So, whereas the little girl's got sensitive feelings, and a bitch sort of is a bit the same. I do, you know what I mean? I do think that, the bitches are much more biddable and easier to insult, I guess. So yeah, definitely takes a softer hand, I think.
Cool. Mate, tell us a little about the I already stuffed this up last time, the rodeoing.
Yeah, so I guess, well, yeah, when I started, like, with dogs, I guess, like, because I grew up, in the hills there, and Philip and Kevin Dawson were a great influence, taught me how to shear. Like, I shore my first 100 before I was 15, and it was the Narracombs, and I would also, we did a shed there at Willow Tree, and I shore my first 100 before I was 15, and he was 65, and he shore 120 or 30 a day at 65. And so it sort of progressed from there. And then it was soon after that I was riding and in rodeoing. And then through that whole process, then I got practice bulls. And then that progressed to more practice bulls. And then, someone suggested that you should take them to the rodeo, and then it went from there. So in the start, I was still riding bareback horses and bulls myself and taking the stock. And then it all, in the end, it all became just too much. It was really difficult to compete. And we had our own arena. We used to take an arena complex, the whole deal in the end. So it was just so, in the end, after a few injuries, I gave away the riding. And I probably wasn't that talented anyway. So I gave away the riding and concentrated on the stock contracting. And that, consumed about 25 years of my life. In that period of time, I was up around Ebor, and I met a fellow called Jimmy Freeman up there, and Brian Darby. They were two old bush fellas, and I had rodeo stock in that country up there. So I guess that forged the type of dog I needed, for the fact of I had these rodeo cattle, they're wild cattle, like they'll test, you know, they're just born to be mongrels. Well, we breed them to be mongrels, you know. Excuse me. So I had bush dogs. I got them off Jimmy Freeman up there, and they were just genuine bush dogs, like worst style of dogs, but they bite both ends, and you know, they got the job done. And then, you know, yeah, that really, we had our kids in that time, but that consumed our life. Like I was away from home for up to 3 to 4 months at a time. And Rachel, you know, we'd start up at Cairns and then work our way right down through Mareeba. It was a big rodeo we used to do at Mareeba, and then come right back, you know, through down to Richmond, go across to Mount Isa, Darwin. And, you know, we'd be away. And the boys, you know, they grew up on the road. It was good. I really believe. Old lady from Scone, actually, you know, as you do, especially being a young parent, we used to second guess ourselves a bit. And a very wise lady at Scone. She's no relation to mine, old lady called Bev Adams. She's very wise. And she said to me, she said, you know, don't ever let school get in the road of a kid's education. And I think that was the wisest words I've ever heard, because, you know, the boys lived on the, you know, every town from, you know, all over North Queensland to all over the territory, back down through New South Wales. I saw every backwoods there was. I learned to deal with all the different sorts of people. And yeah, it was, you know, probably not the most best financial decision I ever made in my life, because it was a lot of work for not the greatest reward monetary wise, but, you know, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because yeah, we you know, we did a lot, you know. It was great, you know. It was the friends we got, you know, and we've still got from the rodeo industry, things I learnt, you know, just you know, dealing with different people, you know. Like, I'm good mates with Troy Dunn, he's our only world champion. Got to meet, you know, Laramie Marchi, spend some time with him through our international events. Adriano Morais, another world champion, you know, got to spend time with him, you know, and being around them people, it's just, yeah, it's very, very, you know, you can't put a monetary value on that, so I wouldn't trade it for the world.
All right, that's awesome. One of your young fellas follow suit as well?
Yeah, all the boys rode in the junior ranks, so all three boys rode in the junior ranks and did pretty well. Toby won a junior title, and Jackson come close. Case was, you know, he was not as serious as other boys, but he had a fair crack at it. And it was funny when we had a transition from just before we sold up, we started on the motocross scene, so they all got keen on that. And then it was funny, like once I sold up, it was a big decision, obviously, because it was part of my life as much as you know, like I'm not just so much a monetary decision, like as in a lot of businesses would be. It was sort of my name and a part of my life, so it was a big decision to be made. And then the boys moved away from rodeo altogether. Just had nothing to do with it for whatever reason. I still can't really put my thumb on it and put my finger on it, but then it was only a matter of years. Toby went, all the boys rode motocross for quite a few years. Toby raced professionally for quite a while. And then all of a sudden, the two oldest boys turned around here about 4 years ago and totally decided to dedicate themselves back to bull riding. So here we are back to square one.
In your blood.
Yeah, exactly. So no, and Toby just came back from the States. But both Jackson and Toby are riding really well at the moment and doing well. So yeah, it's a you know, tough old gig. You know, it's like that, you know, old head on young shoulders. If you could tell them, probably not, but that's not how you see it when you're young, you know.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Really cool. And you mentioned about like those the dogs you had there just to move those cattle around. Like, you call them like just scrub dogs. Like, did you spend any time educating those dogs, or were things too hectic that they just kind of learn on the run?
No, I think, like, probably not to the degree that I do now, but I did spend time educating them. Like back from being a kid, like I just learnt from, you know, like I said, like, oh, Philip, he wouldn't even tell you anything, you know, like it was just a matter of watch and study and you know, why is this happening and why, and you know, why is it working for him and why is it not working for me, sort of thing. So I spent a lot of time as a kid trying to work that out, and I sort of did. And then, you know, that progressed. I mean, obviously I'm still learning now, but I still, them bush dogs, I still used to, spend time training them. They were just a different style of dog, but, they worked like in that country, like Brian Darby. I can still remember when, and by this stage I was 19, 20 years old, I guess. And I can remember, mustering that forestry country up there at Eborn. It's that thick, you can't see 12 foot in front of you. And, we'd come on to cattle and you'd be riding your horse along through the scrub, and I'd be like wanting to stay on top of the cattle. And he's like, no, just let them go. And then we'd go, miles away. And then we'd go down another ravine and Brian would pick up another mob of cattle. And I'd be like, we've lost those. That'll be right, boy. And the next minute he'd have these two mobs of cattle together. And we're probably 3 kilometres apart in thick bush. But somehow he knew, where them cattle were going to travel. He knew where and his dogs were unreal. They'd just go out, and like I said, they had a bit of bark, bite both ends, like Kelpie style dogs, but big bushy tails, like in today's world, let's say terrible types, really. But they certainly got the job done, and at the end of the day, that's probably my biggest thing with dogs, and I think that people need to realise that. Whether you're selling dogs or trying to acquire a dog or whatever the case, it's the best dog is the dog that suits you and suits what you're doing. I don't think you can put enough emphasis on that, because there's horses for courses, and what suits one program is certainly not going to suit another program. And that someone will say, oh, that dog's this or he's that, or but he might totally suit that person. Like there was a old stock carrier here in the Mendoran district that, I remember seeing him. He had this old blue cattle dog cross Kelpie. And I mean, most people wouldn't have been seen dead with it, following them around. It was that ugly. This whole thing, he'd muzzle it, and it'd back the sheep into the truck. It'd get in amongst them. It'd bring them off. He could talk to this thing. And then if there was a lamb get out of the yards, he'd pull the muzzle off it and it'd go and catch the lamb for him, and this old fella could barely walk. And, you could have sold him a dog for $20,000. It wouldn't have been as good as that old mongrel crossbred dog, And so I think you got to put that in your mind when you're talking about, what's a dog worth, or like, is this the dog? This is a great dog. Yeah, it might be a great dog for you, but, it may not be for another person. It's a dog that suits you. I really big on that.
And speaking of that, like what style of dog you look like suits you at the moment, or what turns you on in a dog?
Well, for me, not much has changed really, because the boys still bring these rodeo stock back here, practice bulls and one thing or another, and they're really testy. And we run a lot of rough country, and we're on different places all the time. So and big acreages of rough country. So for me, I'm looking for a dog that's just going to block stock and move stock, so for me, what's worked well is the stronger type Kelpie dog. It's a little bit like, I compare it to the horse world a bit, I suppose. It's like it's changed drastically. Like back when I was a kid, where my father he was on Coleroy Station, and they used to run 50 workhorses in the house paddock, and the house paddock was like 800 acres, but they'd saddle up before daylight, and they were home after dark, and they rode them horses all day. There was a vastly different horse to what they're looking for today. They want to put that horse in a stable, feed him, have him looking $1 million shiny, and then go and compete on him on the weekend. Like if you did that to one of them old workhorses, you'd spend you'd spend your weekend picking yourself up out of the ground, because they'd be, they'd buck for the first hour of the day. So, and it was always an ongoing thing, on the station. There was always horses that buck, but them horses, then they were still, you didn't have to kick them along on dark coming home the airstrip, they were still striding out, it's a vastly different
thing. Ones to take out and compete on the weekend as well. 9 times out of 10, because
Exactly. And the dog industry is a little bit the same, I guess. So now we've got different horses for courses, I guess, like your trial dogs versus dogs that, are working, like doing a 10-hour day and doing big days, it can be vastly different. So, it is a difficult one, to be honest.
Are you still got some of those old lines that you had back then?
Not the bush dogs, no. I actually got away from that, so I don't have any of them. In saying that, I've got some. We also breed a few cow dogs, so big rough, like they're really big. I couldn't even tell you what breed they are. They originated from boxers, Smithfield, God knows what. To be honest, that many influences in them, but I just found them. I needed them for my job. Just something that, at the end of the day, if you had to pull a bull up or you had to do something, or working cows and calves, rough dogs that you could rely on, but you needed something that could follow the horse and only be called on when needed, like your typical blue heeler or what have you. He's really going to make your head hurt in that situation. Whereas these dogs would sort of just be soldiers and come when called, and not do a lot in the interim, because you don't need that roughness 99% of the time. Like it's very rare that you need it, even in the most, harshest conditions. You really only need that, obviously any stock work, minimal stress, minimal, like even with these rodeo stock I'm talking about, like you really upset them and really get them hot, like it's just going to make your job harder. Whereas, like so but there will be situations where you do need that hardness, in that given situation. But it's very, you need to be able to, have an accelerator on that dog where, you can, or a brake on him where you can stop him, and he's going to listen. Because it's only just going to create more work otherwise,
What about your feedlot cattle? Do you spend time educating them?
Not so much really, because I find that it's like we definitely use the dogs in the pens with them, but I try and never ever use too hard dogs in the feedlot situation, because they're full of grain. They get very hot very quickly, so you have to be very cautious of putting too much. It's very much a standoff situation. Let them take their time. Let them, like really be on the defensive, I guess, with your dogs, with the feedlot cattle, because obviously you don't want. We're trying to produce an article there that's calm, and and they're much more prone to get hot much quicker because of the diet they're on. So you have to be very careful with the feedlot cattle. I really take in a couple of Kelpie dogs that are really strong heading dogs, in the pens that'll just be blocking that beast that wants to break or what have you. But they'll stand off and just let them make their own way, I guess. No sort of too much force or push.
Yeah. And what about your sheep work? Are you using different dogs again, or are you using the same dogs?
No, same dogs. I'm a big believer in. That's what I'm trying. I guess a lot of people trying to do this too, but trying to breed the one dog that'll back the race, bite a cow, do the lot. I don't believe you should have to. It's only my belief, but I don't believe that I don't like having a dog that I can't use in every aspect of the game. So yeah, if I can't use them on the sheep, on reverse, and the cattle, obviously the rough dogs I don't have anywhere near the sheep. The big crossbred dogs, but all my Kelpie dogs, I try and use them on the lot. Because I think the sheep work teaches them a lot too. Like I definitely like to start my pups and young dogs on sheep and try and keep them off cattle. Because it doesn't matter how tough they are, or probably they're worse if they're tough, because they're more likely to get hurt. So you take that pup that potentially could make a really good cattle dog, and you go and put him on cattle even at 10 months old, and he gets jumped on, badly. A, he could get injured, and B, he's never going to be the same dog confidence wise. So I'm big on trying to keep them on the sheep, for as long as I can before I progress on to dry cattle and softer, more cattle that have been broken in type thing. So I think that's pretty important too.
Yep.
Do you want to tell us a bit about a couple of your dogs in your main team?
So at the moment I've got actually we just lost old Jazz. She was the matriarch of the stud, I guess. She was about 18 years old.
Wow.
She spent the last 4 or 5 years living on a lounge in our lounge room, on a recliner. So she's a pretty special dog. Like, she goes back to the very, very first, I guess, stud dogs I bought. So I bought I bought a bitch, like a pup off Joe Spicer that was out of a bitch called Miss Muffet by Capri Boss. And she was possibly the best bitch I ever put a hand on. Like, and unfortunately at that time it was right in the middle of the rodeo thing. I didn't do any trialing with her, but no, tell a lie. I trialled her and Snow, which was a dog I got off Jim Marshall, and I won the open trial with her at Scone at the utility trial there, and like she was straight out of the bush and went, and that's how good she was. Like she was a freak. And then that's basically where the line came from. So then the old Jazz I'm talking about, she was by Snow, which Snow was a out of a bitch Jim Marshall had. I believe she was a Karana bitch, and by old dog he had called Custard, and Custard was Jim used to trial Custard, and I just the minute I saw that dog, a lot of people used to say, but realistically, I don't think Custard was a trial dog. Like poor old Jim used to nearly give himself a bloody, screaming match, like because he just couldn't stop Custard. He was unreal, and this dog that was buying was the same. Like but for me, it was perfect. Like it was unreal. But you had to work him for an hour, as a young pup before you. Like your first hour was interesting. It was basically just right to let him go because there was no control at all, and I think, that was in the breed, and I think that's carried on. Jazz was just, unbelievable. Like she was, similar traits, and it makes them a bit hard to put up with as pups. Like I believe them better dogs for me, the ones I say are better for me, are very hard to train like as pups, because unless you have the work, you'd really be in trouble. Because like I said, even, like I'll sometimes just, be doing a job in the morning and I'll let a pup out and I think, why did I do this to myself? And then just let it go and just work the mob, just let right out the lead and just let them go and go and go, and then let them work themselves down, let them lope them down, and then then you're right for the day. But if you were to try and really jump all over that and try and stop it and get a handle on it, I think it just doesn't work. I think that in that situation you have to let the dog be the dog, and then let it get it out of its system, let it lope down, and then try and work on it. So that was actually talk about my father. That was something he taught me with. I didn't spend a lot of time with Dad, but back when I was a little kid, they had the Collaroy station horses, and like I said, like back then, them horses, they were work horses. Like they all, bucked and kicked and did all them sorts of things, but they were just magnificent horses at the end of the day. And that's something he taught me with the horses. Like he'd never try and educate one of them horses of a morning. He'd ride it for 4 or 5 hours and then start to play with it. And like I said, they're just different training for different types of strains of horses or dogs. I guess it all comes back to pressure and release and how much pressure you can put on. What and like I said, like you put probably your collies and your quarter horses, you can put a lot more pressure on younger and still get reward. Whereas your kelpies and then your old lines of stock horses, you try and put that pressure on young, they're just going to blow up and you're not going to get the reward. You're not going to have success.
Sour up on you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, good. And Custard, is that? I know you like a good yellow dog, mate. Is that where the yellow come out in your line?
That's where the yellow come from. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I actually asked Jim about that. Did he have any? And he actually doesn't have any descendants himself. So yeah, that yellow line has come through. Your old timers will tell you that that the yellow dog's got no presence, but I haven't found that at all. I haven't found that at all. Like that line has got a heap of presence. So yeah, and a heap of work in them. But yeah, that's where the yellow comes from.
Got a couple of handy ones around you at the moment?
Yeah, I have actually. I've got some really nice pups there. I was lucky enough. Chris Stapleton sent me a couple of bitch pups there that I've got going. I've got a lot of respect for Chris. He's one of the greats in my opinion. Once again, he's one of them blokes that doesn't say a lot. He'll I just think he's a great handler and got a great strain of dog. I really like his dogs also. Like I say, I've got a fair bit of influence of Chris's bloodlines in there. And they're pretty much work dogs, probably idle back a little bit from what I had, but not far. And that's been a good mix. And then, yeah, so, that Jazz line all goes back to that, that custard line keeps popping its head up,
Yeah. And having such a different array of stock to work all the time, what do you believe makes a good sheep and cattle dog for yourself?
For me, working the types of sheep and cattle, we even our sheep, like we run 1,000 Wilterpole cross Australian white ewes up at Inverell, but it's in hilly, rough terrain, gullies, and we don't get there a lot. We might only muster them sheep 2 or 3 times a year. So they're wild as bugger, So I need a dog there's sort of a bit of debate on this one, actually, and I can see both sides of the story through some like breeders and that I really respect about the whole debate whether, you want a pup to get to 12 o'clock or not so much, just not quite, because what, and I really respect it too. Like what they're saying is by the pup getting to 12 o'clock, you're sort of stopping the flow. But in my situation, I like it because a lot of the time my stock are just genuinely trying to escape in a bad way, I guess. So I really like that dog that's going to get to 12 o'clock, set himself, as it is stopping stock flow, but at the end of the day, that's what I want. So I like a dog that'll get to 12 o'clock. Because I then also believe that you can, in another situation where, you might be working stocks that are a bit calmer and you want better stock flow, you can if you've got a handle on that dog that really has got the urge to get to 12 o'clock, you can bring that back. If you've got a handle on him, you can, he's always going to want to get there. That instinct will always be there, but you can just get, if you've got that connection with him, come mate, and you'll do it without too much drama, I believe. So yeah, for me, I really do like that good heading ability. And then I also need presence. I have to have presence because, like we have terrain where there's big, long summer grass or saffron thistles or, like stubborn stock. So they have to be able to push as well as block. So, we need a bit of mungle in there in the fact of, even with sheep, the one that will, front up like can block a goat or a mongrel Wilterpole sheep, so we need that presence, push and block, something at the end of the day, if they won't move stock, they're no good to me,
Yeah. You go those Wilterpole Aussie Whites because you're sick of shearing?
Yeah, well, pretty much like in the country where we were or where we've got them, like the infrastructure's not there anyway. And then, also because, we're trying to run so many acres, like I found that the merino sheep just weren't, or even your first cross sheep weren't, the reward wasn't there for the amount of input we had to, man hours, and fly control, lice control in them rougher sort of places. I found it just wasn't working. So that's when we went to the shedding sheep. Yeah. And they just, they're much more robust and we're still getting, we're not obviously getting the same money for the lambs as you would have, prime second cross lamb, but we're doing a pretty good job on them and getting them very, very, close to that reward for much less input, they're mongrels to work, like in the yards, in the, fences, the whole lot. Like there's no debate about that. I actually enjoy it because it really, we talk about making a dog. I love going to Inverell is my main one because, them sheep, there's gullies and like they just try everything, like they're so cunning and try to escape and, like you'll be walking them down a laneway, and there'll be a pop hole on the side of the laneway and the next minute 20 sheep, boom, they're going through that pop hole and they're in the next paddock. Well, then that dog behind you has to jump the fence and get out and bring them back through that pop hole. Like little situations like that, in my opinion, that's what makes a dog. Like you can do all the ground training you like, that knowledge to just go bam, them sheep have escaped without too much command and jump a fence and bring them back through a pop hole. That little exercise is, that's what makes a dog, in my opinion,
Yeah. Real work experience.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yeah. There's a big difference.
Do you have many wild dogs around? Inverell, or not really? Do you get many wild dogs around that Inverell area, or?
We did get a couple up there. Yeah, so there was a little bit of a problem there at one stage, but we seem to have cleaned it up. The Rural Lands Board gave us a bit of a hand, put some cameras up. We did have a couple of dogs up there.
Yeah.
Once again, but those, like I think the mad Wilderpole sheep are much, harder to track than what the neighbours' merino sheep are. So I think they tend to go, leave them alone a little bit. But I think we're pretty much on top of it. Yeah.
We spoke a bit about your own line today. Like, do you breed many pups? And if you do, what do you like about breeding?
Oh, yeah, I love the breeding side of it. We breed, well, I've only got really seriously back into the dog, like I say, not long ago, but it's probably been 8 years now, I guess, that like throughout the whole rodeo career, I just I had a few of the, like the stud dogs, but I never, didn't do any trialing much, and didn't really concentrate on my breeding. I just had a team going and kept enough around me to keep, my work. But since I sold up, I set my goal to do a bit of trialing and get more, back into my breeding. Put a better facility here at home, as in a training facility, better kennels. So, all that stuff takes time, but it's been probably 8 years. Well, really, I went to Chris and told him what I was doing, Chris Stapleton, and Joe Spicer. He sent me a couple of bitches. I just told them both what I wanted and, what direction I wanted to go in. And I was pretty lucky, they really did a good job sending me what I was looking for. And but look, realistically, like I'm where I want to be and where I am now, I'm still only about, a third of the way there, to be honest, because, it takes time. It really, really takes time to get that I guess you're never going to get it, like realistically, you're always going to be, it's like anything, you're going to be trying to achieve better or more or what have you. But yeah, look, I'm really happy with what I've got coming on. But yeah, I guess that's a big part of, the whole deal, I guess, is and I mean, that's probably another point that, like we're selling dogs and one thing or another, and the exposure there's been through, even those few TV shows, there's been muster dogs and one thing or another. I think it's great for the farmer to learn more about dogs, how to use them, and no different to the so many good training videos online now, whereas, like I said, back in my day when I was young, you had to go and find a dog man, follow him around. That was the only way of learning, whereas there's so many alternatives these days. You've got great access to online videos. I watch them myself. It's great. You can sit there and learn a lot about it. And even like those shows on TV, your farmers that sort of wouldn't cater or have dogs, they see it and it sparks an interest. And wow, this could make my job easier, and then they get more interested and start to learn. But a big part of the whole dog industry, I think, is educating the farmer, that it is a useful tool, like and how more productive you can be on your farm with the right dogs. I think we're moving in the right direction when it comes to that.
Oh, that's awesome, mate. That's good advice. And you mentioned Jazz there being a matriarch, I think, of your thing, and you mentioned how important bitches are to keep to you. What do you need to see in a bitch to be able to keep her in your program?
Well, for me, I want a bitch that's going to be strong enough, like we said, to work cows and calves. Then, you know what I mean, be biddable enough then, to be able to work sheep without, damaging them or, be able to idle them back, in the yard so they're not biting and one thing or another. So just that good all-round dog that'll do everything. And I mean, I guess it's just, it's just a dog you click with at the end of the day, especially with the bitches that you're going to keep to breed from. They become part of the family. They really do, like them good ones that are sort of, you can do all the training in the world and have pups coming along and you can, I can put them out in front of you and they might look dynamic, but until you get to that stage for me where really the commands all go out the window, like they can nearly tell by the look on your face that they've done something wrong, and they'll know they've done something wrong. They've got the smarts to know that, you get a communication where you're hardly giving a command. You're giving them a look. That's in my opinion when you've got a dog that you can click with, and that's the bitches I look for, are those bitches that are strong enough to do the whole lot. And like Chris Stableton said to me, and it's very true too, you probably want to breed like a bit too strong for what you like, if that makes sense, if you're breeding dogs, because, and it's very true in my opinion, because like that trait's much harder to get than it is to lose. So if you go back to the more biddable dog that's a bit softer, you'll go that way a lot quicker than you will to a harder style. Like, it's just genetics and the way it works. Whereas it's no different to, say, breeding cattle. If you put a small bull into your herd, you'll go back, all of a sudden you'll go back, like it'll be a landslide back to smaller cattle. Whereas you can go 10 generations putting big bulls into your herd to try and make them, bigger style cattle. It's not as easy to obtain as going the other way. So yeah, really look to keep that strength in the bitches. Probably to the stage where, they might be get a bit of a headache, but yeah, then you'll find they'll breed to what to what you like.
Is there anything you'd like to put back into your line, or put into your line, or change it?
Not really. I'm pretty happy with what I've got, coming along. You probably ask me that question in another 12 months. I'll have a different answer. But yeah, at this stage of, I'm pretty happy with where we're going. So with what we've done, So I don't we breed a lot of pups. I don't sell, hardly any, unless it's a mate or someone I know very well. I don't sell any little pups because I like to get them going, because just for that, be able to place them in the right home, I guess, to make sure they're going to suit. Like you might ring me and say, listen, Matt, I want a dog to solely work cattle. Well, out of that litter, there's definitely going to be one that's going to suit that a little better than some of the other pups. You're always going to get that. So I like to get them started, and not for the fact I want to pick the better pups out of them. It's not that at all. It's so they're suited to go to the home, that they're going to.
Yeah, nice.
And when you say started, how far along's that? Like, what do you?
Yeah, like probably even up to 12 months old, because I believe that, for instance, there was a dog out of the same litter as Jazz, and I think there was only 4 in the litter, and they were all outstanding dogs in the end. There was a dog I had called Pluto, and we took them down. At the time, I didn't have a very good setup at all. We had to go down to another cottage, and there was a young bloke here, a young bull rider fellow that used to live with us for years and years, Dave Mason. He was here anyway, this one yellow pup. We'd go down, and we had a few sheep locked up there, and we'd let these 4 pups out, and they'd all go to work except this one yellow pup, and he'd wander back up around the cottage and go and lick the cat or whatever. And this went on for months and months and months. And in the end, he would have been 12 months old. Maso had just come back from the States, I think, at the time, because he was there when they were little pups. And then he came back, and I said, I knew they're breeding. I said, just take this bloody pup. It might, turn around. He was keen as mustard. So he took it, and he would have took it for another 8 months before this thing did a thing. And he just played with it and played with it and played with it. And eventually this pup signed on. It would have been 18 months, 2-year-old before it signed on. And luckily for me, Dave was going back to the States at the time. And he said, Matt, you better take this pup back. And he ended up, Jazz and Pluto, the 2 best dogs I had in that whole 10-year era. So that, that's a prime example. I'm not saying that, you can afford to do that every time or that it's going to work every time. I'm not saying that, but that is a prime example of how just that pup was totally disinterested at all, like to looking at any stock, to doing any form of stock work until he was 12 months old, and then transformed from that to being one of the most useful all-round dogs I've ever had in my life. So, it can happen, I guess.
Absolutely. You mentioned your training setup a couple of times tonight. What's your training setup look like now?
Yeah, so I've built a pretty nice set of kennels, with all concrete underneath the kennels. It all goes to a sewage system, and then a paddock basically straight off that. On the other side of the house, I have a full set of yards, so like basically right on the other side of the house, and then also have like a little trial set up off the kennels. There's a bit of a debate whether that's going to stay there because I need to build a bit of a block between the kennels and it because they can still hear me and see me a bit there, which creates a bit of barking. But I'm just a big believer in, like, because I've sort of done this with all sorts of, doesn't matter whether you're riding bulls or working dogs or whatever, if it's right there, you'll go and do it, like say, since if, Toby with his, the boys, they have a practice drum where you put it right outside your bedroom. So every time you walk out of your bedroom, you get on the practice drum for 5 minutes or exercise, you have your gym right there. Whereas the dog set up, like every time I go to feed my dogs or go to let one out, I'll go, hang on, I'll just grab this pup and kick it around the sheep for 5 minutes, whereas if you had to go and take that pup, it might only be a 2-minute walk away. For me, I find that you just don't get at it. I wanted to dedicate myself to it. And I find that, I initially started with just the other set of yards on the other side of the house. And it's probably only 300 meters, 400 meters away. But just being out of sight and on the other side of the house, you don't use it as much as being right there,
Totally agree.
So it's
filthiness coming out there.
And I also I built 2 day yards, like, so they're sort of turf big day yards, like tennis court type size, I guess. I find that really good to get the recall on the pups young. So I can get them in there where they can't get away from me, for teaching them to sit and recall. So I have them in these square yards. And that for me is really good because I can get, a pup and say, I'm really fortunate with Rach and our little girl. They spend all the time with the little pups because they just, love it as much as I do, I guess. Rachel spend, she's more patient than me. She spends a lot of time with them. And so I've got that out of the road. And then when I look really good because I step in at, when the pup's 4 or 5 months old and they're all, all the groundwork's done. And then all I've got to do really is get a recall on them and a sit, and then I can take them to work realistically, because it's, I'm reasonably patient. I don't expect to take a pup like that and him not run through the middle of the mob of sheep or make a mistake or, they're going to do that. So I'm expecting that anyway. But as long as I've got a recall on him and a bit of a sit on him, I know that's all goes out the window a little bit when you get in a work environment. But, realistically, you can work with it and then I can take them to work. And that's where we, realistically, that's where we start most of them.
With your goals now, wanting to get into a bit more trialing and that, do you find you put a little bit more on them than you used to, or are you still kind of?
No, I definitely do. Yeah, definitely putting more on them. And I guess that's something I'm playing with myself, like a bit of an experiment learning process, because I'm a big believer in you can put too much on them too young, same as horses. You can put too much on them too young. I really believe that. So I guess it's a bit of an experiment that I hope I don't muck it up in putting, like pushing the boundaries to see how much pressure you can put on them young. Obviously different pups take more pressure than others. So having that eye to be able to pick that and we'll just let this pup go and do his thing or we can, start to put more pressure on him. So that's actually just a process I'm going through. Yeah. Cause I'm definitely putting more pressure on them younger, trying to, because if you do want to, even the best of pups, if you want to get them back to that trialing situation where you can win a trial, you have to have a lot more handle on them than what you do in a work situation. And essentially to do that, you're shutting them down to a degree. So, you're taking the work out of the dog a little bit. Well, I'm not saying you are, but if you go about it the wrong way, you are, I guess. So you've got to be careful not to take the work out of the dog in the whole process, I guess.
Always a balancing act, right? It comes back to experience and feel.
100%. Yep, that's right. Exactly. Yep, 100%.
But before I ask you a couple of questions about trying there, like you've been fairly successful through selling some dogs through auction.
Yeah.
What are some of your takeaways and advice if people think about that's a road they want to follow?
Well, I think that's a really good question, actually, because it's something I really think about a lot. Because I'm very paranoid about selling someone a dog and then not suiting them. Like, it would generally upset me. I'm not about selling a dog and getting the check and away you go. Obviously we're doing it to get a bit of money out of it, but I'm very paranoid. I'd be very unhappy if I sold you a dog and it didn't work out for you because, I had full intention to do that. I'm pretty passionate about it. Obviously, if I take a dog to a sale, I'm pretty chuffed about the dog myself and take a lot of pride in it. I think from my perspective, the biggest thing is probably educating the buyers, because I've actually spoke to some buyers that have bought dogs and then bought dogs from other sales. And it's not the vendor's fault, I don't think. It's more about educating the buyer. Like the way I describe it is, right, so if I've got a pup out there and, I get a stop on him and a recall on him, and then, I can get him going around some sheep and look pretty nice, and then get him back in sheep pretty easily, and I do that here. And then that dog might be 12 months old by that stage. And then you take him into a work environment, and like I've done this on multiple occasions, pup looks dynamic, and you take him into a work environment, and like something will happen, like bulls will start fighting and head down the creek, or, something he's never seen. Then, and also he won't be work fit, so he'll be fit in that little training facility, but he's not work fit, he hasn't done a day's work. And then you sell that pup to a farmer, and all of a sudden that pup's back following the buggy, and shit, I've just spent 10,000 on this thing and it's following me, it's not doing anything, and they're very disappointed all of a sudden because they haven't bought what, it's not the vendor's fault. The vendor's done a great job, got the handle on the pup, blah blah blah. What they thought they were buying and what they're buying is probably the biggest issue for me, like what I can see being an issue, because there's definitely been cases where people are very disappointed with the article they've bought, not for the fact that the article is not what it was advertised what it was, but what they thought they were going to be able to go and do with it. They see it back in sheep, they see it going around sheep, they think that they can just take this pup home and it's going to work in a work situation. It doesn't work like that. Like I compare it to kids, like all that groundwork, like in a training facility like I've got going around, even as far as backing, you've got a dozen sheep there and it's back and it looks great. You take that to a shearing shed where it's back in a race that's 40 foot long and there's, it's 1,000 wethers there. It's a totally different thing. It's like comparing a, like a school kid, he does all his theory. So in my opinion, like the pup where you're teaching him all this stuff, that's basically all theory in my opinion, because it's not work, so you get the best of kid out of school, and and he might learn all the theory, he's done all his safety courses, he's done everything, he's ready to go to work. You pull him out of that school environment and then send him out to work on the station, he's probably not worth much for the first 12 months. Even though these days the kids, they think they're worth a lot. Realistically, to the farmer, that kid that's green as green, he's not a really valuable asset for that first 12 months. Like he'll learn more, the kid will learn more following that old station hand around for 3 months than what he did his entire school life. And the pup's the same, like until you plunge them into that work environment, they have to learn to start to think for themselves, have to get work fit, and that's another problem, because a lot of the farmers don't have constant work for their dogs. So, they've got him chained up, and then they bought this dog and he's chained up, and then they let him off 3 weeks later and his head's not right. So I think it's a big part of it is trying to just talk to, talk to the purchasers and just really explain what they're getting themselves into, I guess, and try and educate them more, which, like I said, through the these TV programs and different things, I've noticed, a great deal of change on that side of it. But yeah, it is a bit of a concern for me. So with the whole auction side of things, I'll really only try and sell that dog that's at least 3-year-old. So he's been there and he's done it. He's work fit. Even if the farmer is not a real good handler, that dog is still going to be of use to him. Whereas, your younger dog, you go back to that 12-month-old, 18-month-old dog, you still need to be a fairly good handler in some degree to be able to get to that next level. Whereas your farmer that's not the best of handler, I really think they're better off buying that older dog that's really going to, like through their work experience, is going to work out what that farmer wants, regardless of whether, his commands are on point or they're not.
Mm-hmm. And selling dogs through those auctions, are you finding many vendors are actually giving you a call and asking these questions, or?
Not enough. No, not enough. I think that is a problem. Yeah, I don't, not it doesn't happen enough. No, to answer your question.
Yeah, I agree on that as well.
Yeah.
And also, like, how does selling dogs to people you don't know sit with you with a dog you've spent 3 years or more with? Sometimes,
Say that again. Sorry.
like, how does it sit with you sometimes selling that dog that you're proud of, but you have no idea where it's going to end up? Like,
well, that's the other side of it, I guess, and that's something I learnt very, very young. I can't think who ever taught me this, but one of these mentors that I had said to me very young, never ever give a dog away. And I said, why is that? And they said, we never ever give a dog away, because if someone's not willing to pay for a dog, they're not willing to go and buy it a decent kennel, and they're not willing to spend the money to feed it. So don't ever give a dog away. And my answer to your question is, if someone's willing to pay, like most of my auction dogs sort of make $8,000 and above, so they've paid anywhere from 8 to 15,000. I generally feel that dog's going to have a pretty good home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't spend that sort of money and not really look after it. I guess you're going to cherish it pretty well by, that's a big part of it for me too. Also, so I get comfort in that, because like them better dogs, they're a big part of our family. So it's and that's also probably getting back to one of your earlier questions with the dog versus the bitch thing. I find that auction dogs are better in the fact that they'll do that transition better, whereas a bitch will be much more conscious of, oh, bugger, I've got a new handler, whereas the dogs are pretty much, they'll go to a new handler easier. And I'll also, my boys all do a bit of work, Toby especially. I'll often give that dog to them for a period to make sure that another handler can, take the dog. He's not going to fret. He's not going to, he's in with a different handler, different home. So I'll give that dog that experience and make sure he is going to go to a different handler before we put him up for auction. Because like old Jazz, for instance, it used to frustrate Toby to death, because she was, like I said, she's the best bitch of, unbelievable. She can do everything from bring the dairy cows into the dairy to sheep work to, the thing could talk, and Toby, being a little bit hot-headed, he'd as soon as he'd get a little bit frustrated with whatever stock work he was doing, like, because everyone like Jazz would be the go-to when you had a job on, and as soon as he'd get a little bit hot, she'd just turn around and go back to the house and just sit there at the house. That was it. It used to frustrate him so much. That mongrel dog of yours, but she wouldn't, whereas the dogs, like, they're a bit harder and will take the bumps or the transition, to a new home a bit easier.
Well, that's cool. Mate, we've mentioned trolling a couple of times. Mate, how much trolling have you done?
Very little, to be honest. When I had Nikki, that was the go get a bitch, and then Snow. I was very fortunate, actually, because, like, I'm going back 20 years ago that I did that, and I managed to win a couple of good trials back then. And I probably didn't realise what I had, to be honest, looking back now, because I've come back and had another little crack. Like, I think I did one before Geary, and then Turawina. I think I've only done 3 since I've been back, and it's probably gave me a new. Looking back, I didn't put a lot of preparation. Like, those dogs were just work dogs. Like, you talked about how much I didn't really put any trial preparation into those dogs back then, and I had a lot of success very easily. So it obviously was the dog and not the handler. And and I've got a lot of good young ones around me now, and going back into the trial arena. Yeah, it's been a holy wow, like, I need to do this, I need to do that. And there's a lot of work involved. It's a very difficult, it's a credit to anyone that does it, and it's a credit to the girls. Like, the girls are kicking butt, it's so many good girl handlers out there now, it's really good to see. I think for good reason too. The girls are more patient, and they, really put the love into the dogs, and they'll study it. And I've been watching that since I've come back into it. Like, it's pretty much back in the day there was no girl handlers, whereas now there's, they're very competitive, So it's good to see, it's really good to see. But it's a difficult sport in the fact of, it's just not your performance. It's the dog's relying on your performance, and then you've got the dog's performance. There's a communication between the both of you. It's your ability, it's the dog's ability. There's a lot of variables there.
No, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
how do you reckon it's changed in the last 20 years?
Oh, look, I think there's probably, looking back, it's been fine-tuned quite a bit. Obviously, with breeding programs and people just spending time. Like, I think probably back 20 years ago, it was more what I did, I guess. You brought your work dog to town and trialed it, not that they weren't good dogs, but I think it's more finely tuned these days. Definitely, there's a lot of people put a lot of time into their breeding programs, put a lot of time into their practice, and fine tuning just for that. Like it's more of an actual sport for people too, now than what it was then. Like I said, back in the day, it was more, like you work people just come in for a few beers and go trialing for the weekend, whereas today it's much more, I think, like every sport, I guess, more professional and a lot more time put into it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to pick my act up, I guess.
Have you got any disciplines of trialing that you really want to pursue?
Well, I'm more, the cattle, utility and yard trialing. 3 sheep sort of out of my league for the fact of just the breed of dog I have. That sort of wouldn't agree with me at all. As much as I like it and appreciate it, it just doesn't suit my type of dogs. Whereas, your cattle and your utility, I particularly like the utility trialing, and then the yard trialing also.
What would you like getting back into it and like having? You said you're a third of where you want to get to. Like, what's your goal? What would you like to achieve?
Oh, look, I'd like to get, obviously get a bigger and better name from the stud. Look, I've had a bit of success selling some good dogs, but obviously go down that road a bit more. Like even like if you sell a dog for $15,000, like people go, oh, gee, that's a lot of money for a dog, but if you worked it out back to an hourly rate, and the time and money spent, it's incredibly cheap, I believe, but because it's part of what you're doing anyway, you don't count the hours and you enjoy it, and like the productivity that a dog of that caliber could bring to anyone's program, I think it's like 15,000 in what we pay wages, and I know what it's like. It doesn't take long to spend $15,000 on wages, and you spend that on your dog, and you've got that dog for 4 or 5 years. So in their prime, it's a pretty cheap investment, really.
No, absolutely, man. And like you're one that's really taken on a heap of mentors in your journey. What about in the trial scene? Is there someone now getting back into it that you're looking at, or you're getting advice from, or you're watching particular people and you're like, oh, I really like what they're doing, and you try to have a yarn with those people and get some information?
At Geary, I did all 3 schools, so I'm mad on that. Look, I can't get enough of that. Obviously, Chris Stapleton stands out for me as a handler. He's the Gary McPhee of the rodeo industry type thing. He just stands out. He's an incredible handler, but he's not on his own. There's a lot of good handlers out there. But I just, that'd be my advice to anyone. It's like, you just can't get enough advice, because you could just listen to someone for 2 hours. If you pick up one little thing that just may make your job easier and put a tool in your toolbox that makes it just that bit easier, it's 2 hours well spent. It might only be the one little tiny thing, but it's still a good 2 hours spent, because that in turn then will save you a lot of time in the future.
Great advice, mate. Actually, while we're on the advice, someone that, and you just mentioned wages, someone that has a team and employs a stack of people, like someone that wanted to get a crack in the agriculture industry as an employer, what are you looking for, and what advice would you give to someone that wanted to look down that avenue?
Well, exactly the same advice that I gave my boys. Unless you love it, don't do it. The agricultural industry is not like other jobs. It's it can be the best lifestyle. It's incredible. I wouldn't, I wouldn't do anything else. But unless you've got a love for it, don't do it, because it's not a, it's not a 9 to 5 job, or it's not a 7 to 5 job. It's a lifestyle. Like you can bet your bottom dollar every time, you want to go and do something that, something's gone wrong, or you have to attend to a sick animal, or, the boss is going to be sowing time or harvest time or shearing time, or, you know what I mean? That one leads into another. So you have to have a passion for it. And if you do have a love for it and a passion for it, you'll go plenty, and that applies to, and I think that's probably why there's more and more girls in the industry, because a lot of the girls are passionate about it. Like we've had a lot of girls come through here that, have ended up such good stock handlers, and because they listen, whereas a lot of the boys sort of, I know, whereas the girls do listen a bit better, and they're a bit, I guess that whole female thing, they're a bit more caring with the livestock. So, if there's a sick animal or something, they're a bit more willing to, to spend the time to fix it and spend the hours. But yeah, so my advice is to really just have a crack at it and then work out, is it for you? And make your call on that, because it is long hours, it is hard work, but it's like anything, I guess. It's not hard work if you're doing what you love. It's not hard work. So yeah, make sure you love it. Simple as that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Have a passion for it.
100%. Yeah.
Well, mate. Who would you like to see us have a chat with on Dog Talk?
Well, funny actually, I read that question there earlier, and it's a difficult one, because all the guys I know that I'd love to have on here and chat, it'd be a really, really lonely show because they don't talk. the old timers that that I would love to get out there. Yeah, like I can't make them talk. You know what I mean? So yeah, they're just not them people. And unfortunately, probably in our industry, that is a problem. Like a lot of like a lot of skills and that stuff is not getting passed down, because them old blokes, they just were a closed book, unless you really pried them, they wouldn't say much, they just, like that's how times have changed, I guess. A lot of those old school fellas, they didn't have much to say unless you really wanted to study them. You didn't get to learn it,
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a hard one.
That's right. If someone comes to mind later on, mate, just give us a bell.
Will do.
That's cool, mate. Really appreciate your time tonight. Know you're a busy man, and not just busy at work, but your family as well. So really appreciate you setting some time aside for us.
No problem at all.
It's been really interesting to hear
Laura's
your
not going to
side.
let you go there.
Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks, and why?
Say that again, sorry.
One duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks, and why?
That's a good question.
Buck out the 20.
Yeah, probably the 20. Go the 20.
Just buck them all out. Mate, thanks heaps, mate. Really appreciate your time tonight. It's been a fantastic chat.
No trouble at all.
So everyone listening live or listening back to us on the replay, please remember we learn every day, and the day we stop learning from each other will be a sad one for all of us. Thanks.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.